Nikon has had a busy year. Maybe their busiest and most ambitious ever. And like many of you, I'm still waiting for my lucky number to come up in the lottery for some new equipment. But this video is about a product that just barely made the end of the year with its release and first shipments. It's this new remote grip for the Z9 and all Z series cameras, actually, the MC-N10. This might have escaped your attention if you're not a run and gun or event videographer. Clearly, that's the target market segment that Nikon has aimed its ads to. And because I do a good amount of video work, I completely get the value of this grip for that group of pros. But the benefits and the use cases for the still photographer might be getting overlooked a bit. So my review is going to focus, pardon the pun, on that. Let's get started. The MC-N10 remote grip, which I will refer to as simply the remote grip, is designed to put the full feel and function of the Z9 camera body into your hand without having to touch the camera itself. The ergonomics are identical, which means they are excellent. And with only a few minor differences, the controls are exactly the same. The big difference is the omission of the OK button and the directional arrows around it. But the functions are not lost. They're just performed via the joystick instead. Every control retains the exact same function as your Z series camera, because it is designed to mirror the Z9, and that's what I'm using it with. This review is based on that. Although I have used it with the Z6 too, and it works perfectly. Just be sure that all your Z bodies have the latest firmware to be compatible with it. Okay, so we know that we can control almost every function of the camera with the remote grip. But what can't we control? Well, you can't switch between still and video mode. That would be nice, but we can't do that. You can't change your shooting mode or frames per second for continuous stills. And you are limited to 2 function buttons, so you'll lose touch of any additional shortcuts that you've programmed to any of the other buttons. But everything you can do with FN1 and FN2, plus the I menu, plus the front and back wheels, all of that is still at your fingertips. The 2 function buttons are located slightly differently for obvious reasons, but they align perfectly to the same 2 fingers and they're easy to use. And of course, you even have the full menu button and you can access every single menu option. I plan to spend some time deciding what features benefit me the most with the grip and then creating a new shooting bank just for that setup. Maybe even one for stills and one for video. Who knows? I've used it in the field for video just once, and I like the prospects of making this part of my usual setup. Here's some commentary from that. So I'm looking through the EVF, which is kind of my preferred method most of the time when I can. And I'm in 4K video, but I'm in FX mode. So in this grip that my right hand is on, all I have to do is press my F2 button and roll the wheel, and boom, I'm in DX mode, because it is set up exactly like I've got the custom controls on the body, which is fantastic. So that I can just control the camera completely with my right hand while looking at the screen and panning for video and things like that. And yeah, I could put my hand up on the camera, and that's how I used to do it, but it's actually a lot better when the hand you're using to control the motion is also the hand you're using to control the camera, if that makes any sense. The other thing I like about it too is that I can put my left hand down on the boom handle and my right hand on the remote grip, and I'm so much more in control. I have so much more fluid motion because I've got both hands controlling my panning while still being able to control all of the camera's, actions and functions. That's a huge plus for me. It really is. I find that my panning is so much more smooth, both in the, up and down and back and forth, and, whatever combination, especially if I'm trying to chase something like a bird in flight. I find it a whole lot easier to be able to do that with two hands. It also is more instinctive for my body, to move something that way. So I'm liking that a lot. And I have some other thoughts about using it for still photography, especially with the remote release or with the pre-release option at 120 frames per second. I think this thing can really, really be a nice tool. But I am just as excited about the ways that this remote grip can be used for still photography as I am for video. I do a lot of product photography in my professional work, and one of the styles that I use a lot, have for years, is top-down photography. There are some shots that really only can be achieved using that top-down. But it's always been problematic, mainly because the camera is mounted high above a table and it's nearly impossible to reach the controls or see the monitor. I use an Atomos monitor to resolve the visual problem, but fumbling to change settings on the camera has always been very frustrating. This remote grip is perfect. I use a 6-foot USB-C cable to allow some extra distance, and it works great. Until I come up with a better solution, I've just clamped this grip to a desktop mic stand that I can position anywhere I want to on the table. It uses an ARRI rosette mount to make it compatible with most industry standard rigs, especially for video. Now it's like having the camera mounted above my head and in my hand all at the same time. I can move my focus point around, change exposures, and of course take the shots simply and easily. I also have all my playback functions right there under my thumb. Once again, nearly everything that you can do with your camera in your hand, you can do with the remote grip. There are a couple of points that I want to opine on, as I've heard or read them discussed a bit. First, battery operated versus rechargeable. I'm going to go with Nikon on this one. It takes 2 AA batteries, which can easily be carried along or picked up anywhere in a pinch. To have to recharge the grip would mean downtime, often when you can't afford downtime. It would also mean an internal battery that eventually will someday wear out. Using another type of rechargeable battery, maybe like a small one that goes in the ZFC, would mean having to carry yet another kind of spare battery and another charger. Speed lights still require AA batteries for good reason, and I think the same logic applies to this accessory. I haven't conducted any real tests, but I've used mine for at least a few hours of on time, and the batteries are still going strong. Okay, next point. USB-C connector versus Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. And once again, I'm on board with Nikon here. While it would be nice to be completely untethered, there are just too many downsides to wireless connections. The most obvious is interference and loss of signal. And there is a 100% chance that that would only happen at the worst possible moment. Another is latency. Wireless remotes are notorious for delayed action. If I press the shutter button or the record button or make a critical adjustment, I need it to happen instantaneously, every single time. In my opinion, wireless would make this remote grip a gimmick. Being wired makes it a tool. And I've used it with a 6-foot cable, and I have no issues whatsoever. Possibly could go longer if needed, as long as we use a good quality cable. Another really obvious use case would be when you're using a very slow shutter speed and just touching the camera to activate the shutter is a problem. And yes, you can use a much less expensive remote shutter activator, and I use them all the time, but this greatly expands that functionality. Now, I would not recommend a $429 remote shutter release, so if that's all you would need this for, this is too much gear for that. Have to lay the camera on the ground for that low-level shot? Use this remote grip and tilt your rear screen for viewing, and then you don't have to lie on your stomach in the mud. I think the uses for this remote grip are almost as limitless as the imagination of the photographer or the videographer using it. It's not cheap, but it packs a ton of functionality inside, and I'm giving it a huge recommendation. What would you use it for? Or do you think it's a gimmick? Talk about it in the comments down below. I'm Dave, and this is Nights and Weekends. Thanks for watching. Now go do all the things, like, subscribe, share, you know the drill, and I'll see you next time.